I will be taking Dark Magician to YCS Niagara Falls. We have until October 2024 to prepare for this event. With YCS Niagara a week away, we have done our due diligence in finding the most optimal way to play Dark Magician. During the last stream, I showcased the deck I've been working on, spending a lot of time on theory, and over the last few weeks, I've seen some success to various degrees. In this video, I'll be going over the deck that is currently the front runner to what I'm going to be playing at YCS Niagara. Obviously, nothing is final, and if things changes, I will be providing updates as the deck progresses. Leading off this deck profile, we are playing the one copy of Dark Magician and one copy of Dark Magician Girl. These are the chosen bricks in question. We can substitute the Dark Magician Girl for a Palladium monster. However, the Dark Magician Girl gives us an easier access to the Dark Magicians, which is a fusion monster that we do play, and it's essential to have this card for the most optimal end board that this deck wants to produce. Playing one Dark Magician does scare a lot of players. Dark Magician's main purpose at 1 is to essentially bounce between the field and the graveyard. If it does get banished, it does hurt the deck. However, there are other avenues that we can take with this particular list. If you do choose, you can play 2 Dark Magicians. I just opted to cut it down to 1. If it does get banished, we adapt our play style. The deck doesn't fold if the one copy of Dark Magician does get banished. However, playing 2 Dark Magician is also correct if you do wish to play it. You just run the risk of bricking a little bit more consistently. Following up Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl, we do play one of the best cards in the deck, which is 3 copies of Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos essentially allows you to unbrick your hand by putting the bad cards back into your deck while searching your important combo pieces. For example, these combo pieces are the likes of 3 copies of Magician's Souls, 1 copy of Magician's Rod, and your Timaeus the United Dragon. Each one of these does their own things in individual ways. Additionally to searching these cards, there are avenues where summoning Illusion of Chaos is actually a relatively decent play if you do hard open the Secrets of Dark Magic, a Soul Servant, or for example, a Dark Magician. Where summoning Illusion of Chaos does help you play around a card like Nibiru, which is relatively prevalent right now. So in addition to searching, you can utilize the monster effect of Illusion of Chaos. It has come up. It's pretty decent. What these cards do is essentially Magician's Soul sends you 2 spells and trap cards to draw 2 cards. Additionally, it sends you your copies of Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl to the graveyard, which does help you progress your game state forward later on in individual combos. Timaeus the United Dragon is the only in-archetype way to summon Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and Magician's Rod essentially grabs you access to every Dark Magician spell and trap card that the list offers. Moving on to the spell and trap cards that Magician's Rod can search, we do start off the deck with 2 copies of Soul Servant. Soul Servant, it has the highest ceiling for a Dark Magician card, but also the lowest floor. It doesn't do anything by itself, however, in a deck that draws a billion cards per turn, having Magician's Soul Servant to essentially stack your deck with whatever Dark Magician card you want to see is very, very important. We then play the 1 copy of Secrets Dark Magic, which is a ritual spell which normally would never come up, and I would never encourage the list to I would never encourage Secrets of Dark Magic to be used as a ritual spell. However, there are situations where Illusion of Chaos being able to be utilized to play around cards like Nibiru does come up with this particular list, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Its main purpose is to fuse, however, and to round off the spells and trap cards, we play 1 copy of Magician's Salvation. Right away you see this and you think, Matchy, where is Eternal Soul? We do not play Eternal Soul. Magician's Salvation's biggest purpose in this list is to be utilized as an extender to when a mid combo, you are able to send both DM and DMG to the graveyard, and when you do revive one of the 2, you essentially utilize Magician's Salvation as an extender by summoning out the other copy. Magician's Salvation, we don't utilize Eternal Soul in this list. 1, I think Eternal Soul is a brick when you see it in your first 5 cards, as is Salvation, but you essentially cut the brick count from 2 to 1. Additionally, Eternal Soul, having a terrible card design and a drawback that when it is popped, it does nuke your board, which is actually detrimental for a list like this. And because of those reasons, we don't play Eternal Soul. We just maximize the value of Magician's Salvation by utilizing it as an extender. Additionally, it's a free send. It is utilized as a free send of Timaeus when you do see it to go into cards like Red Eyes Dark Dragoon or other fusion plays. Moving on to one of the most impactful engines Dark Magician has seen in a very long time, we play 3 copies of Toy Box. What Toy Box does is it essentially sets you your copy of Toy Tank and Toy Soldier from the deck to the spell and trap card zone. What Toy Box has in synergy with Dark Magician is Toy Box is probably the best card to utilize Magician Souls that we have had in a Dark Magician deck in a very, very long time. The amount of advantage you can generate just off Toy Box and Magician Souls is unbelievable, along with the board that those two cards can establish. Playing one copy of Toy Soldier and one copy of Toy Tank essentially limits the amount of times you see them in your opening hand, which when you do see them, it isn't that optimal. However, you can still kind of play the game. If it does come to it, you can put them back with a card like Illusion of Chaos. Now, the best synergy with these two cards, with the toy engine that we have with Dark Magician, is that they give us utilization to grab our copies of Guiding Quem and Blazing Cartesia. Now, what these two cards offer is a lot for the deck. With most other variants that I've seen of utilizing Toy Box, they play other level 4 light targets that don't really have a lot to offer by themselves. The best alternative I could see to these two cards is a copy of Ecclesia, the Dogmatica, along with a Nadir package. That is probably the only other option that I would that would deem viable for Toy Box Dark Magician. What these two cards offer more so is that in this particular variant, Guiding Quem and Blazing Cartesia, if you do open them on their own, they are fantastic normal summons that essentially help you progress your game state forward. So typically when you play an engine, you do play Garnets, whereas in this situation, our Garnets are Toy Soldier, Toy Tank, and the cards that we search off them can be utilized when you do see them on their own, which is very, very important in a list like this. Remember, we're playing Dark Magician, which has an unbelievably low floor, so we need a lot of our cards in our deck to do something and to be able to play on their own, which is why I deem that Quem and Blazing Cartesia are the best level 4 light targets to search off the Toy Box engine. Good deck building practice is essentially figuring out what the problem is with your particular list and figuring out ways to resolve those issues. From the first video where we introduced Toy Box, the biggest problem was what if we don't see Toy Box? So we've been utilizing with a lot of different engines, for example, Diabellstar, and in our last deck profile, we did utilize the Shining Sarcophagus engine with the Dark Magician and Gandora. Now, what the problem is with this particular engine, along with the Diabellstar stuff, most of the Diabellstar stuff was that the Diabellstar stuff didn't do enough on its own. The Shining Sarcophagus side of things, essentially what the theory here was that we had 6 copies of engine to see in our first 5 cards, along with potentially seeing Illusion of Chaos and or Magician Souls to help us generate a game state that way. The Shining Sarcophagus engine, what it offered was an unbelievably massive ceiling. The deck was so incredibly fun to play. However, the biggest issue with the Shining Sarcophagus stuff, in addition to the Toy Box stuff, is that we play so many bricks. If we see the Shining Sarcophagus monsters without Shining Sarcophagus, we run the risk of potentially breaking and opening an unplayable hand, which really doesn't feel great at a competitive level. On a casual level, the Shining Sarcophagus engine raised the ceilings deck to unbelievable heights, and if you want the best end board that you can possibly make, play the Shining Sarcophagus stuff. However, I opted to go with a less bricky engine in addition, alternative to the Shining Sarcophagus stuff with a significantly lower ceiling. However, what it did offer was it offered less hands that are completely unplayable. Finding engines that can be utilized in synergy with Dark Magician, not engines that you can play alongside of Dark Magician, because those are two very different things. What we want to avoid with Dark Magician is a this or that engine rather than a this and that engine. And the engine that I kept coming back to throughout testing is the Runic engine. So we play 2 copies of Runic Fountain. Additionally, we play all the Runic names that we can fit within this list, which is your 3 copies of Runic Tip, 3 copies of Freezing Curses, alongside of 3 copies of Runic Slumber, 3 copies of Flashing Fire, and 3 copies of Runic Destruction. Because Runic cards have the reputation of being associated with several stun strategies, a lot of people are turned away by these Runic cards within Dark Magician. However, the synergy that these cards offer within the list is, one, they generate draw power. In addition to that, they act as extenders. So the biggest question that it all circles back to is, Matchy, what if we don't see Toy Box? Well, if we don't see Toy Box, we simply draw into it. With the Runic cards, we pretty much dig 3 to 5 cards deeper into our deck every single turn, along with the Dark Magician engine itself is a draw engine at heart. So what essentially we're doing is we are trying to draw into our deck until we see Toy Box, which is significantly better than what we've had previously, where it was, do we see Toy Box in our first 5 cards? No, damn, we can play. Additionally, what the Runic cards have alternative to free bodies on board alongside of searching toy box is that we do play a card like Soul Servant. So having the ability to stack whatever card we want on top of our deck as we draw through our deck with our runic cards, the ability to stack whatever Dark Magician spell and trap card we want is fantastic. If we do open the odd chance where we open runic cards, Soul Servant alongside of Toy Box, right, this gets us our avenue to Magician Souls and Toy Box to essentially pop off our combo. Alternatively, if we don't see Toy Box throughout the entire combo, what we can offer is we can pitch runic cards off Magician Souls to essentially then allowing them to be recycled later on with a card like Fountain, and this generates advantage for us going forward as well. Now, what additionally to what I was saying was not only is this a draw engine, but they can be utilized as an extenders, which is something I'm going to be going over within the extra deck. And actually, more so than anything, the runic cards, although they are free bodies, but they are mandatory combo pieces if we do see them to essentially progress our game state so much further ahead than we would have normally been able to do. So seeing like a card like Magician Souls, Toy Box plus runic cards ends us on unbelievable boards that are going to be almost impossible for our opponent to break. Ending the deck profile, we are playing 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. Forbidden Droplet, in my opinion, is the best board breaker in the game right now, alongside of it being one of my favorite cards in the game right now. The synergy Forbidden Droplet has with this list is unbelievable. In the odd chance that you do open Toy Box with Forbidden Droplet going second, you not only break the board, but as well as generating your own board on top of it, because Droplet sends the 2 toy cards to the graveyard, which trigger their effects. You deal with 2 cards and get 2 free bodies. Additionally, Forbidden Droplet paired with any of these runic cards allows you to deal with so many problematic cards on the board. Seeing, for example, a card like Freezing Curses and Forbidden Droplet, what you can do is you can activate for Freezing Curses in Chain Link 1. You then chain Forbidden Droplet if your opponent doesn't have a response, sending Freezing Curses, which allows you to deal with 2 monsters for the price of 2 cards, which is very, very strong. Additionally, Forbidden Droplet has the utilization of going first as well. Having the ability to, because you draw into so many of your engine and so many of your deck, seeing Forbidden Droplet in your hand at the end of your turn is relatively consistent. So just setting Forbidden Droplet on your at the end of your turn and allowing it to be an interruption going into your opponent's turn is very, very strong. Forbidden Droplet is just one of the best cards in the game, going first and going second. It's a card that I've been playing with a lot, and it's a mainstay in any variant of Dark Magician that plays Toy Box 1 and can play a lot of spells. Moving on to the extra deck, the Dark Magician boss monster that we all want to see is 1 copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon applies unbelievable amounts of pressure, and it's so much more consistent to summon in this list than any other variant of Toy Box Dark Magician that I've played in the past. The biggest problem was that in previous lists I didn't see Dragoon enough, but Dragoon being an essential end board piece for the deck is really, really important. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon paired with like a Runic Fountain with 3 runic cards in hand is an underratedly incredibly strong end board, as you essentially have 4 interruptions, a untargetable boss monster that can't be destroyed. It's a very strong end board, and paired with 3 runic cards along with generating your advantage that way, so that if you do burn the discard of Dragoon, you essentially replenish it. It's really, really strong. Additionally, we play the 1 copy of the Dark Magicians, like I said at the start of the video, with the Dark Magician Girl, with the Dark Magician Girl. The Dark Magicians is amazing paired with a card like Runic Fountain and runic cards in hand. The reason for this is that you can chain block Runic Fountain's draw effect with the Dark Magicians. So essentially what people are usually saving the Ash for if they do see runic cards is the draw 3 off Runic Fountain. What you can do here is when you do activate Runic Fountain, targeting your 3 runic names in grave, you then have priority to chain block with the Dark Magicians. You go chain link 1 Fountain, targeting your 3 runic names, chain link 2 the Dark Magicians. So if your opponent does have an Ash, they do Ash the Dark Magicians, whereas then the Runic Fountain is able to resolve. Alternatively, if they don't have the Ash Blossom, you just draw 4 free cards. And if the Dark Magicians do draw into a runic spell or Toy Box, or with Toy Box on board, you set the spell and trap card, which is an interruption for Toy Box. Alternatively, if you do draw into a card like Forbidden Droplet, you just immediately have one of the best interruptions in the game. So the Dark Magicians is actually a very, very strong card in this particular list, and We follow it up with a card like Granguignol. Granguignol is probably the main reason why we play Magician's Salvation, is in this particular list, we don't have an amazing send to send off Granguignol. So within the combo, if we do see Salvation, we just make Granguignol to send the Dark Magician Girl, and then having the ability to revive both Dark Magician Girl because of a card like Salvation, that gives Granguignol the value in this particular list. Then we do end up playing the one copy of Gary, and the main synergy for this is what is recycling Runic Fountain from the grave to your hand. Alternatively, what Gary the Runic Fangs does is that it has unbelievable synergy with a card like Cartesia, Quem, Tank, and Soldier. And why that is because mid combo we do have access to all of these. So if we open Toy Box Souls plus a Runic name, it essentially gives us free access into a card like an Abyss Dweller. Alternatively, we can also make Daigusto Emerald. More so than anything, what these two cards offer is that we don't have to put our level 4 investment into this, as essentially Gary is a free level 4 to make one of the XCs. So we essentially keep a free body on board off the Runic names, as well as generating ourselves advantage. Now for the next card, it doesn't have too much synergy with the toy cards. However, a card like Hugin is really strong, because Hugin allowing you to grab your Runic Fountain, which is the most important Runic spell in the deck, as it pretty much allows your draw engine to be turned on, as well as it turns on all the interruptions on your opponent's turn. Alternatively, if you do see Toy Box with a Runic names and you do have access to Guiding Quem and Blazing Cartesia, what I wanted to do was, how can I utilize Hugin like I did Gary? And that was, is there value off Hugin when I see it with Toy Box? And that there is. So with Guiding Quem and Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, what we can do is we can synchro Hugin into Muddy Muddragon. Now, what does this offer? Muddy Muddragon is essentially an alternative way to get into Red Eyes Dark Dragoon if we don't have a card like Timaeus in rotation. Muddy Muddragon alternatively is just a free body that we take off Hugin, and essentially it makes our opponent have to deal with a guaranteed Dragoon that's coming up, because mid combo we are reviving Dark Magician. Muddy Muddragon and Dark Magician can grant you access to Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Alternatively, there are other targets for Muddy Muddragon. Some I can think of is Albion, Albion the Branded Dragon, Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, which can see play, and it's something I am experimenting with. However, for the time being, this is what I'm running, and I am open to changing it in the future. The extra deck is relatively tight. If I do end up cutting Abyss Dweller, I think that's what I will replace Sanctifier with if I do decide to play it. We finish off the extra deck with one copy of Cross Sheep. This card is really mandatory in any variation of Toy Box DM, as it's an essential combo piece. We then play the one copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight is just generically crazy. Alternatively, the most important part of SP Little Knight is that it does have two arrows pointing left and right, and that is because we are playing a card like Nightmare Griffin. The essentially seeing Toy Box and Magician Souls on its own, it gets you Nightmare Griffin and SP Little Knight, which is really strong. And if you have any other further extension, you just slap a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon on the side of SP Little Knight and or Nightmare Griffin, and having SP Little Knight and Griffin pointing outwards, allowing you to resolve your effects while floodgating out your opponent. We round off the link package with the one copy of Dark Charmer, one copy of Selene, which is also mandatory within the Dark Magician combo, because what Selene can also do is utilize the Dark Magicians more than once per turn. If you activate the Dark Magician to draw one, you link it off into Selene. Selene then summons back your Dark Magicians, and then allowing your Dark Magicians to draw you another card to dig further into your deck for further combo pieces and or extenders. And then we round off the extra deck with the one copy of Access Code. Access Code is just you clean up your opponent's board, allowing you to pretty much kill them if you don't utilize your Runic cards that turn. Access Code is essentially just the game ender alongside of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. There are occasions where you don't even go into Access Code because you're just out resourcing your opponent to the point where they scoop. If they don't scoop, Access Code is essentially the flood and the cleanup that ends the game on its own. So that's it for the extra deck. I will quickly go over the side deck that I did take. This side deck is more than likely subject to change. However, I just want to showcase what I've been playing because a lot of people do ask what I do play in the side. So we do play one copy of Moonin. One copy of Moonin is essentially for time situations. We used to play Magic Formula because Magic Formula was incredibly accessible within the Toy Box engine. Magic Formula was also just a awesome win condition. However, in this case, it's significantly easier to just activate a runic spell rather than digging through Magic Formula and trying to resolve it. We then play 3 copies of Phantasme, the Fantastical Dragon. This is the budget Molchami. If I had Molchami, I'd be playing Molchami, but Phantasme is just really strong. Alternatively, it is utilized as an extender because you end your turn with a free body on board. Alternatively, it does protect your runic monsters for resolving their effects. We follow it up with 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched or Dark Ruler go crazy right now. I prefer Evenly Matched, one, because we don't have a battle phase anyways, and what it does is when it does resolve, pairing it with a card like Forbidden Droplet can just win you the duel outright there on its own. We follow up the deck with 1 copy of Triple Tactics Thrust. Triple Tactics Thrust grabs us access to your 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talents, if you do want to see them, alongside of 2 copies of Raigeki, an alternative board breaker if you don't see Evenly Matched. Raigeki is also really strong right now because not many decks are ending on Omni Negates, so Raigeki is really, really strong in that regard. We then play the 1 copy of Feather Duster alongside of the 1-dimensional barrier, because if you are playing against Tenpai, you just thrust into your D barrier and it's really, really strong. If down the line I deem that Tenpai is a very strong deck and a deck I'm very scared of, I will probably just cut the Raigekis, or 1 Raigeki, 1 Talents, for 2 additional copies of Dimension Barrier, which is really, really strong. The final card in the side deck is the 1 copy of Skill Drain, because it has unbelievable amounts of synergy with Magician Souls, and if you do see Skill Drain, you kind of win the game on the spot, which is really, really strong. So that's it for the side deck. I can go over siding patterns down the line. It is something that is relatively important because the deck isn't easy to side in and out of cards. It does require a lot of practice and knowing your matchup. So that's it for the deck profile. Like I said, the deck profile isn't finished yet. The deck isn't finalized yet. I still have a lot of work to do before YCS Niagara Falls. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. And I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I can't wait. My next video will probably be post YCS Niagara Falls. If not, I'll have a video before Niagara Falls, just going over what I think I'm going to be expecting. For the time being, thank you so much for watching and have yourselves an amazing day. Bye.